Everyone, and welcome to the first episode of BootlegSketch. Today, we're going to cover Erysipelothrix rhusiopathiae. Notice the thrix in the name? That's fairly unique to this bacteria's name. I mean, there's a fungi that ends with thrix as well, but I think it's different enough not to be confusing. So we're going to use that thrix part as our anchor to this scene. We have a bunny dominatrix. By the way, I did not write the story for this scene. You can thank John for that one. Alright, so anyways, we have a bunny dominatrix with a bowl, or rather a box of Trix, the Trix cereal. You know, Trix are for kids? So that should be strong enough to anchor you to the scene. In fact, from now on, if you hear this organism's name, I want you to think of the dominatrix bunny eating her box of Trix cereal. Okay, so what's going on here? Looks like we've had an accident on the farm. A bunny dominatrix was bringing her pig to Al the butcher, but she was distracted by her Trix cereal and lost control of her pig. Her pig jumped in front of that chocolate van, which crashed into the fire hydrant. Okay, so let's start with the general characteristics of this bug. Notice all the purple? That's because Erysipelothrix is a gram-positive rod, as represented by these purple lines on our chocolate van here. But it can also form long filamentous colonies, as represented by the straw. So it's pleomorphic, as in it can take on several shapes. Remember that Rickettsia and Chlamydia are also pleomorphic. And lastly, Erysipelothrix is not a spore former, and it's catalase negative. That's why you don't see any walnuts or cats around here. Now let's take a look at our crashed chocolate van. As far as the growth of the bacteria goes, you want to grow it on blood or chocolate. What's all that smoke? Looks like someone has the chimney on. The smoke, or CO2, should remind you that Erysipelothrix needs CO2 in the media. Once grown, Erysipelothrix can be either alpha or beta hemolytic. Though the alpha portion is more emphasized in our notes, that's why we named the butcher's shop Al's. Get it? A for alpha. One claim to fame for this bacteria is its ability to form hydrogen sulfide. You usually see this as a black precipitate in the vial, referred to as H2S on TSI slat, which stands for hydrogen sulfide on triple sugar iron slat. To help you remember that, we can see that we have eggs being dropped on both sides of the image. On one side, we got a rooster, which probably should not be laying eggs, but I couldn't find a good hen, kind of dropping eggs down into the bucket, and on the other side, we see that our chocolate van has crushed an egg on its way to crash to the fire hydrant. On both sides, the water nearby has turned dark, which is to remind you of the black precipitate you would see in that test. And that should be good enough to anchor you to that little factoid. Okay, now let's take a look at Al here in his butcher's shop. Ouch. It looks like Al has cut his hand accidentally. Erysipelothrix reservoir is primarily farm animals like swine, turkey, sheep, etc. And people usually get the bug from some occupational exposure or skin trauma, like our friend Al has done to his hand. So how does Erysipelothrix present? Well, you usually see patients with a self-limiting, contained infection of the skin. It's usually painful and swollen. It will have sharply defined and elevated edges and is described as having a purple-red appearance. If you look at Al's hand, you can see that he's already showing signs of the skin infection. And if we look at the hand of our chocolate van driver, he also has a similar rash. So they're already kind of infected. And if that wasn't enough, we put a cloud up here as well, which is characteristic of the kind of rash that you would see with this infection. And this is a good time to remind you not to confuse this erysipeloid rash with erysipelas, which is a skin infection mostly associated with group A strep. So this is erysipeloid, not erysipelas. Okay. So looks like our fire hydrant is really badly damaged, guys. The heart-shaped fire hydrant reminds me that Erysipelothrix is more than just a rash. If left untreated, it can lead to endocarditis. Okay, so how do we treat this thing? Well, forget about vancomycin. I mean, you can see that the van here is totally crashed and useless, right? But guess what? Penicillin, ampicillin, and other beta-lactams should work. This is why our driver is pointing his pencil at our dominatrix. He's trying to get her insurance info to file a claim. And that's all we think you should know about Erysipelothrix rhusiopathiae. Thanks for watching this bootleg sketch, and see you next time. Dun dun dun.